For centuries, magicians, psychics, and mentalists have claimed they can move objects, effect events, or even cause bodily harm using only the power of thought.
Don't reject it just because you don't understand it.
Do these paranormal powers actually exist? Can humans really use their mind to affect matter? In the late 1970s, the U.S. military did something extraordinary. A group of top soldiers started to investigate whether the mind could be used as a weapon. Among them was retired U.S. Army Colonel John Alexander.
We had been blindsided by the Soviets on several occasions. And so we had some senior leaders who were willing to explore very unique areas, and paranormal phenomena was one of those.
The military set up a top-secret operation called the Stargate Project. Its mission, to harness paranormal powers for military use. Some soldiers felt they had experienced the paranormal while advancing through the jungles of Vietnam. They called it Point Man Syndrome.
When certain people are on point, they sense things like where mines were, ambushes and whatnot.
John Alexander investigated psychokinesis, the ability to move objects just by thinking. His experimentation started with spoon bending.
We had a session at my house. General Stubblebine, who was the head of INSCOM at the time, was present, and we had a truly phenomenal event occur directly in front of us.
At this top-secret session, a psychic was asked to demonstrate the power of the mind.
The guy held up a fork, and this thing just dropped over 90 degrees, and we saw that, and we said, wow. Need to look into how you can do that sort of thing.
Alexander focused his unit's time and resources into learning psychokinesis. Amazingly, it wasn't long before he started to get results.
This particular one was Lieutenant Colonel. He was holding these forks just like this. They used to be matched. This thing dropped over a full 90 degrees. With all of us watching, came back up and went to where it is now. And you can see that, however you look at it, those are dramatically different. Absolutely no physical force involved.
Encouraged by their success, Alexander and General Stubblebine started programs to train soldiers to use other paranormal powers, like remote viewing.
Remote viewing is a means of data acquisition. I guess you'd colloquially call it psychic spying.
The Russians had built a huge concrete structure on the White Sea in the Arctic Circle, but U.S. intelligence had no idea what it was for. Alexander asked remote viewer number 1, Joe McMonagle, to use his psychic powers to see inside.
And he described the building. All they gave him initially, by the way, were coordinates. Described the building, then went inside, looked, and said, there's a big submarine in there. And he described it.
Unknown to the U.S., the Russians had developed a new class of submarine, the largest in the world, with multiple titanium pressure hulls.
It was what became known as the Typhoon-class submarine. Again, our intelligence community had totally missed it.
Was this result an incredible stroke of luck? A coincidence? Did the military application of psychic mind power pay off?
There's usually a pretty simple explanation for what seems to be an extraordinary event.
Jim Underdown has devoted his life to testing claims of paranormal powers.
And we take it upon ourselves to use science to explain why some people hold some of these beliefs.
The Center for Inquiry invites people to prove their powers in a scientifically acceptable testing environment.
We had a woman who claimed to look inside the human body and tell if a kidney was missing or not. She failed her test. We had people who claimed to be able to send words from one person to another. So lots of people come forward with these claims. 0 are successful.
In fact, Underdown believes their claimed powers have more to do with magic than with the supernatural.
Sometimes the simplest parlor magic trick is employed in the guise of supernatural power.
Skeptic investigator and magician Mark Edward believes he knows how spoon bending is done. He feels it has nothing to do with paranormal powers.
A lot of people are interested in spoon bending, so I'm going to just show you how easy it really is if you focus your mind. So focus on bend. Think of bend. Bend. Yes, I can feel it starting to loosen. Yes, just slightly. A little more. Keep concentrating. There we go. Yes.
Whoa.
A lot of psychic energy in the room. And let's just try and get this part. This is really good. You'll see it just true.
Mark is a magician, so he can't reveal how the trick is done. But one version goes something like this. The spoon is already bent, but Mark is hiding the handle behind his fingers. Mark has a false handle, which he pinches to make it look like the spoon is straight. Releasing his grip makes the false handle drop, so it looks like the spoon is bending. When Mark shows us the bent spoon, he's actually diverting attention away from the fact he's pocketing the false handle.
Try and get this part. This is really good.
It is impossible to think that the spoon could bend on its own without cheating.
For Jim Underdown, most claims of paranormal ability, including the ones researched by the U.S. Army, are a hoax. So did the military waste millions of tax dollars on paranormal research? Or have they already proved in the lab that the human mind does indeed have extraordinary powers of mind over matter? In the 1970s, it's alleged the U.S. Army carried out research into how psychic powers could be used in combat. Now, parapsychologist Dean Radin has devised an experiment intended to produce evidence that psychokinesis might actually exist.
This is an experiment looking at the relationship between mind and matter.
Radin believes the human mind is capable of interacting with something much smaller than spoons. Photons, the subatomic particles that make up light.
Lisa is asked to place her attention on an optical system, which has a laser beam in it.
Hidden from view, a laser shoots a beam of photons through two tiny slits etched in a slide to create an interference pattern.
So she's at a distance, she's not able to see the beam itself, but she's asked to imagine that she could see the beam.
According to his theory, if psychokinesis exists, the subject should be able to influence the nature of the interference pattern just by thinking about the photons.
This picture here is showing what the camera sees in the double-slit system. And here, we're measuring what's happening in her brain. So we want to see, is there a relationship between the EEG and the interference pattern? If we can show that the relationship exists, then that's showing a mind-matter interconnection.
The experiment begins.
Welcome to the double-slit experiment. Please relax.
Okay.
Please influence the beam now.
The subject is asked to imagine the interference pattern in her mind's eye.
You may now relax.
Then she's told to ignore the pattern completely. At the conclusion of the experiment, the images of the interference pattern are compared to the EEG readout.
These colors are showing the degree of correlation. If it's positive, we get a redder color. And so this is interesting. This suggests that when Lisa is paying attention to the optical system, we actually see a change in the optical system, even though she's doing it in her mind.
Could this be coincidence?
If we see red, it means that there's a relationship. If we see this kind of red, it means it's a highly significant relationship. It's meaningful, that the relationship that we're seeing is not chance. It's a real effect.
Can the mind affect matter after all? Radin's findings are controversial, and the majority of scientists remain skeptical about psychokinesis. Nevertheless, anecdotal reports suggest that the U.S. military still takes it seriously and restarted its paranormal research in the wake of 9/11.
Probably the biggest thing that happened was causing people to think. and think differently and to think beyond the realm of the possible as they knew it.
Is psychokinesis real? Whatever the truth, the military decided it was worth investigating whether the mind could be used as a deadly psychic weapon. Did they succeed? Weird or what?